Hello, everyone, and welcome to yet another Velero community meeting and open discussion. Today is September 1st, 2020, the 1st of September. We are heading into fall here. I hope you all had a lovely summer and are getting ready for a little chillier weather if you live somewhere where it gets chilly. So today, we're going to start with some status updates. First off, we have Carlisia.
Hello. So I had a PTO last Friday, and I have two PRs. One is a refactor of the backup storage location controller, and I addressed. Well, actually, I wanted to refactor the refactor, and that is done. It's ready for another review, which hopefully will be the last one. I think it's in pretty good shape now. And I'm addressing the code reviews on my service status request PR. It's also not a big deal. Should be done soon. And then I'm gonna jump from that to reviewing the PRs, and some of them I wanna test too for the 1.5 release. And that's it for me.
Sounds good. Do you want to share why you were on PTO on Friday?
I got married.
Yay! Congratulations, Karlisia.
Yeah.
Super happy for you.
Thank you. I'm happy too.
Does anyone have any questions or comments for Karlisia regarding her wedding day or code issues?
Yeah.
Nothing? All right. Then we're going to head over to Nolan. Thank you, Karlisia.
Hey, so this past week, I was doing a lot of planning exercises. I know I've been saying that for a while. There was some planning exercises within VMware that I was taking part in. And there were some discussions that Stephanie and I had for the 1.6 timeframe. There's also some of that that's going to happen later today, and I think some of that will be shared at the community meeting next week. I've been reviewing some PRs. A lot of the PRs that have been coming through have been documentation PRs, fixing up some problems that we missed with our transition from Jekyll to Hugo. So thank you a ton, Abby, for fixing those up. That's been very helpful. As folks may have noticed, we did say that we talked a little bit about v1.5.0 being released yesterday, and that did not happen. We'll go into that a little bit more in the discussion topics. I'm going to rearrange my stuff a little bit. I am on community support this week, and I'm on vacation next week. I'll be asking some folks to do some other things like the community contributor shoutouts. Although, as we'll discuss on the 1.5.0 topic, we've got a set of release blocker PRs, and then we're probably going to go into basically a code freeze. So we may have PRs getting merged across plugins and Helm, but there probably aren't going to be a ton of code changes going into 1.5 or into main. And then I also wanted to welcome Dave, who will be starting, Dave Smith-Uchida, who is joining the Velero team as of September 14th. Dave's been at VMware for a while, and he brings a lot of experience in data protection, backup, things like that, storage. So you may have seen him around if you've been in the data protection working group. So Dave, if you want to introduce yourself real quick. I didn't prep you before this, but I'm putting you on the spot a little bit if you'd like.
Yeah, such fun. Yeah, so hey, thanks for the introduction. And yeah, so I'll be joining the team. I've been working with Kubernetes from the vSphere side for a couple, 3 years now. I've been doing the plugin for the Velero plugin for vSphere, was one of the projects we started over there in the storage area, and also previously did the what we called first class disk, which is the disk infrastructure for Velero. So I'm looking forward to, or not for Velero, for Kubernetes. So I'm looking forward to moving up the stack a bit and looking at things more broadly, cross-cloud and so forth. So this should be a lot of fun.
Cool. So looking forward to having Dave fully on board in the team. Like you said, he's been doing a lot with the vSphere plugin. So this will be cool. And so that will bring us up to 5 maintainers on the team. So that's what I've got.
Awesome. Thank you. And welcome, Dave. Do you have any questions for Nolan here? All right, Bridget.
Hi. So Nolan introduced me a couple of weeks back, but I think, as I mentioned then, I was still stuck across 2 different projects because I've been working on Sonaboy up until this point. During last week, I finally transitioned over fully to Velero, so I've done the handover of Sonaboy. So I've just been spending the last week kind of getting up to speed, made some initial PRs, and now trying to learn more about the project by reviewing some of the PRs that we have for 1.5. So that's it.
Awesome, and welcome again to the Velero project, now as a full member of the maintainer team.
Yeah, very excited about it. Thank you.
Fantastic. Does anyone have any questions or comments for Bridget? All right, then we're diving into the discussion topics. Nolan, you got the first one.
Yeah, so the main topic here is 1.5 was delayed a little bit. The reasons for that are twofold. We kind of put a short timeline on that, and it was not really reasonable given the scope of changes, and that didn't give us a ton of time to do testing. So that is something we want to take a step back and do some more appropriate testing. The other thing, Jonas, if you could click on that link there. There were a bunch of refactorings that Karlisia is doing that we'd like to get in there for our controllers. Also at the bottom, the number 2804, I'd like to get the restore hooks work from Andrew Reed in. Get that included, and then some documentation from Ashish on restore hooks, and then the top one is from me for just kind of our release process automation standpoint. For the beta, we did like a little ride along with most of the team to see how the beta release process worked, and we ran into some bugs with that tag release script. So we decided to take a little step back and say, this isn't quite ready. Let's give it a little bit more time to bake. Let's get some of these refactorings in and test those. And let's also get these restore hooks in. So these are kind of the critical ones that we'd like to get in, and then look at maybe cutting an RC. And then from there, if we've got critical bug fixes or security fixes that need to go in, we can look at that. But these are, right now, this is the main set of work that we're looking to get in. Does anyone have any questions on this?
Do you have an estimate on how much we're going to delay?
My hope is that we can get all of these merged in this week. My other hope is that the release doesn't block on me taking vacation, but given the testing, I also don't want to put the RC out and then immediately cut a release, right? Dave is helping us out with getting automation set up, automated testing. This was a big theme for our 1.6 planning, that we want to get more automated testing and more end-to-end testing set up. This may not start in the open, just in interest of transparency, this may not start as an open source thing. The results may be fed into PRs and run as nightly jobs, but they may not be on open source infrastructure yet. But that's something we're looking at in the 1.6 timeframe. But we're going to start with what we start with what we have. So my hope is not much more than a couple of weeks, but I don't have a definitive timeline there yet. I think my goal is to get these PRs in, test, and see where we're at. Phong, have you tried the beta of 1.5?
Yes, I did try, but I only tried it with my feature. I haven't tested all the features that enhance into it. Based on what I see, it worked fine with my features. I was able to back up with the order resource and everything, so it's good on that aspect.
Yeah, and that's fair. Again, like I said, I think the timeline for the beta to the previous timeline was pretty short, and given what Velero does, I think that was pretty aggressive. So we're going to broaden that a little bit and get a chance to get these refactorings in, and then test those refactorings.
I have a question in regards to testing for PRs. I have the restore hooks PR out, and I was wondering how much end-to-end testing should I do on that before merging, and how much should I do after merging? Because I compiled from branch and made sure it works. I'm not sure if there's a full QA suite I need to be doing against that.
That's part of what we're going to be working on in 1.6 is getting a fuller QA, or that wasn't great. That wasn't great wording. We're going to start building out our end-to-end test suite in 1.6. So there is not a great suite that's there right now. We have our unit tests that run in the make CI target. So if you've included new unit tests or integration tests in your Go definitions, those will run, but they're not running against a live cluster, and a lot of the testing that's been done through Valero's lifetime so far has been manual. So with 1.6, we're going to try to take that and systematize it more, make it more automated. The vSphere plugin team has Jenkins installs internally that do that. They spin up a cluster, they run through it. Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they crack open the snapshots and verify the data in them and things like that.
We do a restore. We have a utility actually that is a scale out utility, and we'll probably we need to talk about if we make that part of it's something that's open sourceable. So we'll be looking at that.
That's Kabishi.
Yep. And I could definitely need some more contributions, but that would be something cool.
Yeah. Okay. So to I guess to answer your question more directly, Andrew, we don't have that suite defined right now in terms of full end-to-end running against a proper Kubernetes real API server. If it's passing make CI right now, that's what we've got. And then manual testing is kind of, historically, it's kind of been, we stop the development work and test manually. So that's where we're at. Going forward, we're going to try to fix that. And so from an engineering point of view, that's been our big ask for getting time to do that in the 1.6 Q3, Q4 timeframe. Does that help?
Yes, thanks.
Any other questions for Nolan here? So I can talk about this one. For on Friday, VMware is having a company-wide holiday or day off. This is Friday, September 4th, so any support or anything will not happen during Friday. And of course, on Monday next week, we have Labor Day, which means that everyone's off as well. So it's a 4-day weekend for us here in the US. So just want to make sure everyone knows that and set expectations accordingly. Next up, we have Carlisia.
Yes, Ashish asked this question on when he was reviewing my server request migration, server request controller migration to KubeBuilder. But this is not new code. This is code that was there. This is existing logic. And I thought it was worthwhile just raising the question. Basically, because the question is it necessary to halt the server in this case? Doesn't seem to be such a damaging case that would require halting. But we don't need to answer this right now. We can roll this question to the next community meeting where we'll think about if anybody has any strong opinion that yes, it should just stay like this. So basically, we have a list of controllers that are disableable, that people can configure and disable these controllers. It's not all of them, it's some of them. Now, if you pass a configuration and that configuration which you pass doesn't match any of them in that list, then we get that fatal log, halt the server. So the question is, do we have to halt the server in that case?
I'd have to go back and look at the original commit that added this. I think this was more as a, I think this was a user friendliness thing to say, hey, you probably wanted to shut off something else, but you provided something completely, something we don't know about. So
maybe you mistyped.
Right.
And then the thing you wanted to shut off didn't get shut off.
Right.
And the server just continued.
Yeah. In the context of the PR, I kind of think we should not worry about it right now and open an issue.
Yeah.
And I can comment on the review to that effect, because
I already commented that we're not going to change that in that PR if it needs to be changed.
I can see opening an issue and having the discussion there.
Okay.
Yeah, and putting it here, I think it would just crash loop the pod. Because it's going to log a fatal, the process will stop with a non-zero exit. And Kubernetes, I think, will kill the pod because that's the entry point of the Docker file. Yeah, I don't know.
I'll open an issue because I didn't expect us to have an immediate answer to this right now.
Yeah. I don't know if anybody on the call is really using this. I think the original use case was there was someone that was using it to basically start up an instance of Velero per controller using the disable controllers flag. And that also gets, I think, the old restore only flag behaviors mimicked by disabling the appropriate controllers. So if you turn off the backup controller, then you have a restore only functionality.
So just my 2 cents here. I see this as a standard configuration error, essentially. So if you have a configuration error in a config file, you're not going to be able to start up any services. I see this as something similar. So I would say yes to this. That's just me.
Yeah, that's my initial reaction, but I think we can file an issue and discuss it. And then at that, the issue at least gives us a place to document it and point to.
I'll do that.
Cool, thanks.
Thanks, Carlisia.
Yep.
All right, next up we have Phong.
Yes, I want to give a quick update on the issues of backup cluster resort that I mentioned in our previous. So I do not work directly on this, but I have a team member. Her name is Bridgette. She is working on this project, and she just gave me an update that if we do not have the cluster resource flag turned on, we leave it empty. Then she's still able to back up the cluster resource that being used by the specific namespace that we backed up. So because of that, including the PVC, the cluster and role, I forgot exactly the type of PV resort, the type of cluster resort that she is interested in. But these are all backup within the context of the namespace. So we don't need the enhancement anymore, at least for what we are trying to do. So that is the update on that item. And we also have another questions for the community as a whole. So the idea was that right now we back up everything, one by one in serial, right? One backup, for example, it will run a pod, we back up a pod, finish everything under the pod, the PVC at the pod, and then it moves to the next pod and so on and so forth. So there are situations when we want to back up these all of the, for example, if we're using a hook to executing a snapshot for that specific PVC to back up it, right? If we want to back up a bunch of them that relate, a bunch of related pod, for example, all of the pod that belong to an application, a database application, we want to snapshot them as close as possible to each other. If we do it in serial, for example, we have 20 pods, right? Then these will be like, the first pod and the last pod may be too long, too distant apart. So can we think about a way to parallelize this so that we can, let's just say, instead of backing up one pod at a time, then we spin up 20 go routine to run backup 20 pod in parallel, so that hopefully that these snapshot can be done like as close as possible to time, right? This is more, that is one of the example of parallel side is to improve the performance if we involving such a thing. So that is just what I have a question here. So I know that right now we're doing serials and I know that, but I wonder if we have any plan to parallelize them and so on and so forth. That is my questions.
So you're talking about parallelization within a backup job, right?
Yes, within a backup job. Yeah. For example, all the pods belong to one namespace, and when we back up a namespace, we have to back up all of these pods, right? Can we do them in concurrent? Can parallel themselves?
Yeah. So are you thinking with snapshots or with resting?
Snapshot. The problem I am facing, I'm working on is using snapshot.
Yeah. So I think at the very low level, at the snapshot level, there's really not a resource contention problem, but we do have to be careful about overloading the control plane. So it's going to depend on which cloud platform we're running on, how many snapshots we can issue in parallel, for example.
So what I'm trying to think about is if this would be a tunable thing, because what I wouldn't want to do is parallelize the requests against the API, the Kubernetes API server, and blow through the resource request limits and rate limits and stuff for Velero. And also we would need to see if there are more, if this would need to apply to specific resources. So I'm wondering if this would be something that we would need to design such that you could say similar to our plugins currently, but such that you could say, okay, for pods and for PVCs, do parallelism. For cluster role binding, do parallelism. For this CRD, which maybe we don't understand it yet because people can define their own arbitrary stuff, do parallelism. I mean, the requirement right now, as stated, is pods. I'm just wondering if this shouldn't be more general at the Kubernetes API server level.
Yeah, that sounds logical to me, that if we want to do parallelize, we don't want to, we have to state it at a certain level, right? For now, if I run a pod, a backup for namespace, it will backup pod in serial, and before they walk into for each of the pod, they go down to the PVC being used by that pod, and the PV is using by that PVC, and so on and so forth. So it seems to be naturally already grouped into this group. So if we want to run them in parallels, then it has to follow that order too. Otherwise, it will mix up or maybe corrupted the current backup. So we need to be careful.
I think at a high level, I'm not seeing a reason we wouldn't want this. I think it's a matter of implementation details and design, because like this is so on the one. I think one of the big things we want to look at in 1.6 timeframe, at least from a design perspective, is concurrency at the backup and restore job level. So being able to run multiple backup jobs and multiple restore jobs at a time. But then this is one level down, which is within the restore job, backup, or I'm going to put restore to the side right now. Within the backup job, I want to pull stuff from the API server in parallel, and I want to be able to make volume snapshots in parallel if my storage system will let me. So this is basically trying to get 2 levels of concurrency. So it's like a tiered approach, which makes total sense to me.
I think this is a much more tractable problem than actually running backups in parallel, because we pretty much can assume that these objects are actually independent of each other. So it's not as though you have to worry about, snapshotting the same object twice, because you're only going to snapshot it once in a backup.
Right. Once we get the list, we can just kind of fan that out.
And then in terms of like resources and stuff, so the pods themselves, we don't actually snapshot anything except the pod definition, right? So that should not be, so our real concern here is with getting the storage as close as possible to everything, or is there actually something going on with the pods themselves?
The main thing is the data, like the PVC being used by that pod. Let's just say I have a cluster of 20 pod belong to Cassandra, right? And these data, they are, a certain data on each of them, and we want to snapshot them all in like almost like a cluster-wide snapshot, like 20 PVC being snapshot approximately in very short period of time for each other. So that is the scenario that I concern right now.
Yeah, that's a pretty reasonable thing. And I think we should also look at, like, even in the Restic case, we should be able to run multiple Restics simultaneously. I'm not sure if we do at this point.
No, I don't think we do. It might be per daemon set node.
Okay.
But
fanning out the snapshots, and at some point you may even want to be able to do things like, say, this group have to be taken within X milliseconds of each other. If you couldn't do that, either fail or retry. That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, so it sounds like the actual resource we care about here isn't necessarily PVC, it's PV.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the claim, it's the fulfilled claim that points to the actual disk. So you say pods. I mean, we can grab anything from the Kubernetes server in parallel. I think that one I'm a little less concerned on. It's the PV and its associated volume snapshotter here.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then the Restic case is a special case there, since we're doing the file system. Like the volume snapshotter plugin part, I think, is a little bit more tractable.
We'd have to make sure all the volume snapshotters are thread safe.
Yes.
They're mostly fairly simple, so that it shouldn't be a big deal, but we'd have to, that would be part of this.
Right. Yeah. The ones we know about, we'd have to make sure they're thread safe.
Yeah, some of it also depend on the backend storage. Like for some of the backend storage, they allow to, snapshot multiple volume in parallels, but some can only do one at a time, or so on and so forth, right? But that is something that I want to bring out to discuss.
So the other question this brings up for me, and I know Dave, this might be relevant for the work your team just did. The CSI plugin does not work on the volume snapshotter plugin interface, nor does the vSphere, or nor will the vSphere plugin, because that's on a backup item action. So I don't think we should answer this here, but something to think about is, because that's on the backup item action, it's not, it might be different.
Yeah.
Well, it will be different.
Well, it will be. It will be. And actually, there's the CSI plugin. So, I guess with CSI, we're actually going to, we can pound out a bunch of CRDs, snapshot CRs, but we actually have no knowledge of whether they're being executed in parallel or not.
Right. Yeah, we're leaning on the storage system to do it for us.
Yeah, and the CSI driver. But maybe that's something that we investigate and we start pushing on on both the Kubernetes side and the storage vendors to get that working, because just pounding out all the CRs is something that should be, pretty quick.
Right. Yeah. So I think this is a good discussion. I'm gonna request that we get another issue for this, because that will help us track it. And I think that would be useful for Stephanie as well, because I know she's been tracking this kind of high level stuff as feature requests. So Phong, if you could file an issue, and we could take that and work off of that and coordinate there, and maybe at some point produce a design document for that, because I think there's going to be little special cases like this CSI plugin that'll trip us up. So I in general, makes total sense to me.
Sure, I will at least start with an issue, filing an issue first, and then we can follow up with that either way by a design or something. We can continue discuss it then. Yeah. Definitely, I will do that.
Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you. Next up, we have Scott.
Yeah. So, I linked the issue here. Basically, this comes out of rather, I linked the PR for the design doc. This came out of an issue I entered several months ago, where we had a failure case in our environment where we're restoring image stream tags, which is an OpenShift CRD. And basically, one of the ways that you can create an image stream tag is where one tag references another. So there's a reference from one to another, the same resource type. And so our initial plugin had we passed the additional items slice, including one of the item that needed to be there. And we found that there's a race condition, and sometimes this works, sometimes it doesn't. Because the way the code works there, you go and we return the additional items. Velero then restores those items, runs restore item all the way through, and then continues on to restore the current item. But because of some delays with Kubernetes, sometimes it doesn't show up as available yet. So when we try to restore that item, it's not there. So I entered an issue about that. We had some discussion from the linked issue here, where and basically the back and forth was that you guys were interested in solving this. It wasn't really a priority, but it suggested that I write a design doc for how we might implement this. And it's been on the back burner for a while. I finally got back around to doing that. And it's basically a proposal to add an additional method to the restore item action plugin that will allow Velero to, after calling the restore and all the additional items, it can then running with the timeout to basically say, hey, are these items ready? And the timeout part would be similar to what we do with the CRDs and a couple other cases where we want to, try this method, until we hit a timeout, and then once the timeout is reached, we may or may not fail, but that's kind of the basic idea here. I can go in more detail now, or I can just let you guys look at it offline and comment on the PR. I think I've put the design together reasonably close to what Nolan and I had originally discussed in terms of what was desirable. Anyway, I'm certainly open to making updates. So, that's one thing I should call out. There are a couple of different options I proposed, because this would require change to the restore item action interface. And the easiest thing to do would just be to add a new, this new, if you scroll down, you see what I proposed there, but I forget the name of it now. There, right. So our additional item is ready. You just add that function to the interface. Because of the backward compatibility issues, if we do that, then everybody that has the restore item action plugin, once they update to this, is going to have to go and add that, and it'll be a no-op in most cases. Certainly in our plugins, we only have one plugin where we would need this right now. The alternative I proposed was to have an optional interface that we could implement, and then Velero itself would check to see if it implements that interface, and then call it if it's there. The second case is more backwards compatible, but it's, from a design point of view, it's not necessarily. I mean, some people don't like this. They say it's not good for Golang style reasons, because you're checking kind of at runtime whether it implements this interface. But those are two basic approaches that would accomplish the same thing. From my point of view, I could do either one. I'm guessing that the core team would probably have an opinion as to which would be preferable. And so that's the biggest thing I need feedback on, is basically we would need to come to a decision as to which of those two approaches we want to take, and I could remove that from the doc. And then, of course, the rest of it is just all along the way, suggestions for improvements, things that I might have missed or might have gotten wrong here in terms of what, based on your goals. Another, I guess you call it another issue to think about is the question of timeouts, and whether we should make that configurable, how to handle that in terms of how long we're going to wait, because you hit a certain point where we're done waiting, and then even there we have a decision. If you hit the timeout and the wait still hasn't come and says, hey, this thing is ready, we could fail at this point and say, hey, the timeout wasn't reached, this is a required thing, let's fail this item. Or we could say, look, we hit the timeout, but that doesn't guarantee it's not here now. Let's just, best effort was put out. Let's try anyway and go on. If the item itself fails, then we still have a failure. You could even go more complicated than that and make it configurable at the restore level. I don't know that that's warranted, but again, those are the kinds of things I'd be looking for from core team feedback to see where we're going with this. My hope is to, and obviously we're not talking 1.5 here, we're talking some future point, but basically once we are in agreement on approval on this, then my plan is to fairly soon after that put an implementation in place for review as well. So that's all I had now. If you want to have questions, or if you just want to look at this offline, and we can discuss it further later.
Thank you. Appreciate that. The configuration questions are important. I linked in the agenda. We have a way for getting configuration into plugins with config maps. And the question, the interface, whether we make it required as part of the standard interface, or we make it well-known optional one, that's thorny, because like if we make it part of the proper interface, then we're basically breaking restore item action plugins, implement it. So I have to think about that.
Yeah. I mean, the big downside is there. It breaks every plugin until they modify it. And the other thing is, you're basically, the reality is probably 95% of plugins are this is going to be a just return true. We don't care. It's not relevant here.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. So it's the trade-off of that or introducing potential runtime failures, which
exactly.
The point of this whole thing is to avoid runtime failures. So
yep.
I have not had a chance to look at it more before I comment more. I'm curious what other people think. It's been a few months since I've had this discussion, but I'm curious what other folks think.
Any comments? All right, so we'll look into the PR a little more here, and maybe bring this up for discussion in the next or future meeting as well.
Okay, sounds good.
Awesome. All right, next up we have Rafael.
Hello, everyone. This is going to be quick. Just a quick item to validate that Genting is offering to help on that ticket. That's something that has been dormant for a couple months. I'm going to be reach out him to work together on that one. I know that some just to refresh some people and put some context is basically complete the work to make Velero support multiple API group versions. So this is a very high level proposal. So again, I'm gonna reach out him and see we're gonna work together. He can code, he can test, and something like this. One of the things that didn't kind of like hold this development on Velero core a little bit is the concern that change gonna work with the plugins. So I end up putting some of my time to come up with a plugin before actually coding. So we're gonna work together on that one. And if he sees or watches this replay at his daytime, I'll do that and work with him offline. Thank you. Any questions?
Raphael, you had a couple people on your team that were going to start in, it was about two.
Yes, I have a couple contributors inside of VMware. I did an overview for them. So hopefully we're gonna get more help and traction in a couple weeks, mostly after VMworld. So one of them is really busy with that, but after that, she's really excited to jump in and help on that one.
Sounds great. Any other questions, comments for Raphael? All right. Just a quick one. Some of you might have seen this. This was added yesterday. So we now have a new badge here in the README, which is the CII best practices, saying that we passed the best practices for the CII badge. What does that mean? Well, if you click this, you'll get to a link talking about how Velero as a project is following best practices based on best practices that have been created by the Core Infrastructure Initiative. This is an initiative that a lot of other open source projects are using to show that they are adhering to the best practices for open source projects. The passing badge is the first badge of 3. So after this, we can look into getting a silver badge and a gold badge. And you can take a look at the website here and see some of the projects that you like and enjoy, and see if they have gone through this same process as well. What this is essentially showing what we do and how we work as an open source project, how we handle reporting of issues, how we handle automated testing, how we essentially run the project. So this is something that's fun and interesting. So we now have this new badge here that we can enjoy in the README. And then, yeah, please look into this if you're interested in adding this to your open source project or another open source project that you might help out with. And with that, we are moving into contributor shoutouts. Nolan.
Yeah, so the activity on the main branch has kind of slowed down as we've gone through the release process. But like I said earlier, Abby has been doing a ton of work to fix up our move from Jekyll to Hugo, and thank you, Abby. So the first one I'll point out, Abby has or two of these. Abby has been doing a lot of work around our style guide to, one, get us a style guide and point people to it. Two, to update the existing docs to conform to it. I'm sure there's stuff that could probably still use work, but even getting started here has been a huge improvement. So thank you there. There's also been some broken links throughout the site, broken tables of contents, broken tables. So a lot of little things that were not because Jekyll and Hugo work differently. So Abby has been tremendously helpful in finding these and fixing them. So thank you, Abby. That has been very helpful. And not only is she fixing them, she's fixing them in a way that is improving or maintaining accessibility. So that is very much appreciated. And then finally, she has been working with me to make sure our release checklist is documented and public. So this release checklist was something that was on a Confluence page inside of VMware, and now more of it is on, I think this is all of it, is on our release instructions page. So this is not just our mechanical stuff, it's what do we do with the marketing kind of stuff and things like that. So huge thank you to Abby for helping us get our documentation house in better order.
Yeah, I didn't realize how many PRs I had opened. Kind of fresh.
Yeah, it was a lot.
Thank you again for reviewing. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. And then I had a window open with this person's name. And this next one is Chinya Huang from SUSE, it looks like. It was fixing some linting issues on Helm 3.3 on our Helm chart. So thank you very much for finding these and fixing them up. Making sure they pass the linting tool and keep it clean. So thank you very much.
Awesome. And that was it. Does anyone have any last questions or comments or anything that they would like to add to the meeting today?
Just want to say thank you for your guys' support, Assis and Nolan, to support me in when I'm trying to build Velero 1.5.0 beta in my code. Thank you very much. I was able to resolve the problem on my side with your help. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right, awesome. And on that note, we're going to close out for today. Thank you all for joining the Velero community meeting, and have a fantastic rest of the week, everyone. See you all next week.